So there's something about grief where if we contract in too much, it's very hard to navigate forward. And if we're willing to open up a bit and say, well, I'm part of nature, I'm part of this ecosystem, I'm part of this planet, I'm part of our universe, I'm part of the star system, I'm part of the Milky Way, then suddenly things shift because we're not so lonely, we're not so isolated, we have this massive interconnectedness.
Hey, I'm Tanya Wilkinson, and this is Death on the Daily, bringing the conversation about death out of the shadows and into the mainstream. Because along with birth and change, if there's one thing that's going to happen to us all, then death is it. And we're going to explore how death actually shows up for us on the daily in a multitude of ways, and how when we allow ourselves to accept and to be with death, how it can teach us a whole heap about how to live this life well. We're all humans of nature, but somewhere along the way, a lot of our societies, and I'm looking at Western society in particular, we forgot. And in forgetting, we've not only disconnected from the world around us, but also from the deepest truths of life and death. And with today's guest, I'm going to be exploring how reconnecting with nature can restore our understanding of these fundamental parts of our existence, as well as helping us to move through grief, to grow, and to live life more fully. And it is with a big smile on my face that I introduce Maria Deutsch, my coach. Maria was born in Southwest Germany among people who cherish community, value diversity, and care deeply for the land. And she's carried these values across the globe, finally settling in Aotearoa, New Zealand in 1988. And throughout her life, Maria says she's been drawn to restoring and deepening the powerful relationships between people and their nature, and sharing the deep mystery and magic that goes with it. And we talk a lot in this episode about that magic and how you can access it. And she's worked with and learned from Indigenous cultures, including her own Indigenous roots, cherishing their deep knowledge of our interconnections with our planet. And Maria's biggest ongoing passion has been the development of her own brand of deep nature work, which I can attest to the fact that it's a gentle yet powerful development tool set that through interaction with nature, you can receive insights and steps for growth that are otherwise difficult to access. And I can't stress enough just how important this nature work is at the heart of everything that I do in Death on the Daily, because the reality is, if we are not connected into nature's life cycles, then we can never truly understand death. So I am so excited to welcome someone who is very dear to my heart onto Death on the Daily. Maria, welcome to the show.
Kia ora.
You are connected with me from Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's currently 28 degrees. You are in summer, in that beautiful high energy summer flow, whereas I, on the other side of the world, am in winter, cold, got the heating on. It's very dark outside. It's 7:47 a.m. mode. So we're on other side of the world. And I think it's really beautiful as well for us to flow into this conversation around nature, of us at the sort of the polarities, you know, in the seasons. And let's just dive in from that place of nature, of obviously this podcast is about death, of death as a part of nature. So Maria, I would love for you to just share, I suppose, a lot of what you shared with me when I first started working with you about how death is a really crucial part of the life cycle of all of us as humans of nature.
Okay, so for me, I go even for a bigger picture and say for us humans to evolve, to reach a fairer society, to have a healthy, sustainable planet, the systems and ways of being need to change and need to die. And we need to bring in new systems and new ways of being. And so there's always going to be an evolution for us. Now, nature, we're part of nature, we're not separate. And nature has had millions of years of experience in evolution. It is just a storehouse of knowledge and is totally at ease with adaptation, with the cycle of death and rebirth, with the transformation, the transmutation. And so when we, in our lives, deal with big or little deaths, We might lose a loved one, or it might be we lose a really favorite job, or whatever it is. We can go into nature and tap into that natural knowledge of how to be with death and rebirth, how to be with transformation, how to be with transmutation, and how to be nurtured by it and helped by it, so we can grow and not get too scared or too stuck.
Oh my goodness, Maria, that is so profound and so powerful. And what I can feel is, and this is really resonant of our journey together, actually, that we can step outside of, are very modern and very not connected to nature, unless, like me, you've got some houseplants everywhere, homes, and we can step out into nature and we can be held by nature and we can learn and grow through nature. And I think what you shared is so profound as well, with everything that's going on in our very modern world that is so destructive to nature, just how crucial it is that we do reconnect into nature. And I would love for you to share just on that topic of, how can we each take those steps to reconnect to nature and to be held through nature and have nature supporting us in understanding, dying and death and becoming comfortable with it. What would you say to anyone who's listening as to sort of what they can do to have nature support them in that journey?
I'd probably start by saying, stepping out into nature, as you say, is actually stepping in, because we are not separate. And by stepping out into the natural environment, being with a tree or a river or a beautiful sunrise, we're stepping into our own nature, because we're so interconnected, and we have entered in a society where there's a lot of disconnect. And the moment we step into nature and connect to nature, we connect into our own nature. And that's why it's so rich, and that's why it's so nurturing. So there's that aspect. I want to just say that first. And, our relationship with nature reflects our inner nature. Where we're within, we're without. Where we truly engage with the trees and the rivers and the birds, we engage within. So there's no separation. And it's such a beautiful understanding that when we remove the separation, the belonging just rockets up. We're not lonely anymore. And we have this whole ecosystem that holds us, because it's inside us and outside us. And so for people who work with, aspects of death and grief, I would really invite them to go and study that in nature and go, what can I learn here? Because this is part of me. So if I can learn it about a seed or a butterfly, then I can learn it about myself. So this interconnectedness brings this companionship almost of saying, going outside and saying, hey, buddy, what can I do with this? I'm finding this really hard. What can I do with it? And I'm thinking of, it's constantly present. If we think of the seasons, each season has both death and rebirth in it. So the spring, where people think, oh, spring is all about rebirth. But actually in spring, the seed in the ground germinates. And the seed in the ground has to let go of its walls, of its cover, of its protection that it had, and become vulnerable and come out as a totally new being and have the first few leaves in this stage of vulnerability. So there's dying and birth right next to each other, coming from the seed's transformation. And then if you go into summer, well, summer has got the same process. It's got the flowering. Summer is all lush and growth, and the flowers turn up, but the flowers don't stay forever. And the rose that's beautifully flowering and scented turns into the rosehip. And so it lets go. So it's dying as a flower and it's birthing as a seed. Then the first stages of a seed, because it grows for quite some time. And then, you take it further and you take it into autumn. And in autumn, the seeds sort of complete that cycle of life. And they often fall off the tree. The apple falls off the tree, and that is another phase of death. And for the temple trees, they drop their leaves and go into this deep resting period. And so again, there's this rebirth moment. And then you go into winter and you think, oh, well, not much happens in winter. But actually, the the apple that's fallen to the ground in winter gets through a process of death down to just the seeds of the apple waiting for spring to then come out as an apple tree. And winter, often rebalances things. The aphid plague in the garden is gone because they're going through a process of death, but there will be enough to come back in spring. And so it's this whole, so each season has got, the death and rebirth and rhythms of life embedded. And if we start really deeply connecting to them and bringing them into us, then it suddenly feels like our body, our being becomes more attuned to that cycle, and it's not such a foreign thing. It's actually something around us. We just don't necessarily look at it that way.
I love that, and I love that reframe of we're stepping into nature, into our human nature, and also the fact that nature's seasons all have death and rebirth in them, just as all of our human seasons, cycles of life, transitional moments all have that. So I think that's so profound, and obviously that's really poignant, because I'm conscious that for anyone who is listening in the Southern Hemisphere, they're going to be listening in summer. So obviously, whatever season you're listening to this episode in, go out there and witness, where is dying and death happening, and then that rebirth part of the cycle.
And look for the magic, right? Look for the magic, because I think it's magic. You have this, beautiful rose flower, and suddenly you've got this rosehip full of vitamin C and seeds. And it's magic. How did that happen? You have this little bean seed that suddenly bursts apart and drops and lets part of itself die, and then suddenly these roots come out and these leaves, and you look at it closely and it just is magic and awe. And if you see it in slow motion, it's like, whoa, what's happening here? And so when we look at the magic of the death and rebirth, again, it becomes more natural to us and less scary, and more curious. We become more curious and less fearful.
That's so beautiful. I think what's coming up for me is that awe that nature always inspires. And for me, that's been such a powerful tool, exactly to your point of connecting into that magic. And then really when I root it into my own transformation, it's then seeing that magic that is possible within, if only we allow ourselves to sit with the difficult, to go through we're talking about it just before, to go through the sludge, to be willing to go into that mud in order to have that transformation. So I can really connect that into my own journey as well, and how that mirrors when it is like, wow, look at this amazing rose hip, where did that come from? How did that happen? It's incredible, in the same way that we are all incredible and we all hold that potential. And I'd love to hear as well, because you obviously coach many people, as well as I know you do a lot of work with youth as well. And when you sort of, I suppose, look out into our society and how we have disconnected from nature, how does that also then relate to how we move through life and we move through our own sort of growth journeys, our own transformations? Do you see any sort of interconnectedness in our disconnection from nature, and then how we sort of are able to transition through difficult times?
I find that there's a real hunger for reconnecting and for healing or rebalancing the relationship. And yet it's an unconscious hunger. So if I do a facilitation with a big group and I bring in 50 images of nature, say we're in the boardroom, we're in third level of a multi-story building, I bring in 50 images, and at the morning say, I'd like you to pick 2 images, one reflecting yesterday and one today. And people start fighting over the images, right? Oh, I want that one. Oh, that's so beautiful. I want that one. And they start trading. And it's really quite funny. And it's a very powerful tool, of course, but it's really quite beautiful to watch how that hunger bursts forth. I want to look at the mountains. I want to see that beautiful bird. And that image really holds deep meaning for me. Can we trade? And And so I think, we are disconnected, but we're not, because we have thousands of years in our DNA of understanding why we relax. We don't think about it, but we walk into a green forest and suddenly everything is, I can breathe, And we bring all that knowledge with us, and our ancestors know how to do this. And we've only been in this sort of more industrialized version for a few generations. So the knowledge is there, but it's not in the conscious mind that we have this easy tool to just play with, and it really, it has this power to go past the little deaths. Like, I worked with a group that asked me to help them with a strategic view of their business, and there was a lot of tension, there was a lot of grief, people had left, there was a lot of hope had died in that organization. There was deaths, and they were having trouble going forward into a positive future. And we brought in images of nature and said, what would the future look like if you use a nature image? And then it takes away all this person would be upset if I say this, because people become very spontaneous and their subconscious comes in and tells some stories. And then we capture the stories and we go, what's the values behind those stories? And suddenly they're all alignment, and they go, but we all thought we disagreed. We actually all agree. So that's sort of the magic. And I think, also working with young people, they go out and suddenly go, I'm feeling at home here. I'm no longer lost. I feel like I'm a real person here. All the judgment drops away, because one of the building blocks of deep nature work is take it outside the walls. Take it outside, i.e. into nature. But you drop the rules. The corporate rules are gone. The parent rules are gone, because there's just nature. And so suddenly the world opens out and people can behave differently.
Oh, that is so powerful. And what you really connected me to is I suppose that simplicity of that reconnection, because actually, when we're working with the unconscious, and as, for example, we're working with unconscious fears and things that, are sort of firing through and really sort of governing our actions, versus this, which just, as you were sharing around that reconnection, I connected to, I think I told you this story before, when I went on I call it my pilgrimage to the woods in 2019 when I worked in Formula One. And I just had a real cool. I just got off the plane, come back from a business trip. I spent 2 weeks in China. It'd been really, really stressful. Hadn't spent much time in nature. And as soon as I got home, I thought, I need to go find some woods. Never been to a woods in London, didn't know where the nearest one was. I found the nearest woods. Then my husband and I, we walked 2 hours to those woods, 2 hours back. But I remember as soon as I got into the woods, to your point, it was that first breath, and I can still feel it in my body. It was like, I'm home. I'm back. Okay. Immediate grounding. And that for me put me on the journey to moving next to a forest. Not that everybody has to move next to a forest, but that was my choice. And also then on the journey to working with you, of actually, I've started my reconnection journey to nature, and actually I can see how profound it is. But to your point as well, of that simplicity of, putting beautiful images of nature and that immediate response, that's what I think is so powerful about the deep nature work that you do, is that, and all nature connection work, is that actually it is really grounded in the simple, because to your point, it's in every single cell in our body. We can't get away from that, no matter how much, our sort of industrialized, culture and systems have sort of severed that connection. Actually, it's still firing off. So when we have that stimuli, be it pictures of nature, be it getting out into any type of nature, you just feel that breath and you feel that inspiration. So thank you so much for sharing that, Maria.
There's also, when I hear you speak, your journey from Formula One and to where you are now, it's a reflection of nature, because in nature, it's like if something no longer serves life-enhancing principles, it lets go and it decomposes. It doesn't get lost, because it becomes truly compost and nourishment for the new. And so all your experience from Formula One comes with you and nourishes in you, but you went in that forest and something inside you went, that career no longer serves my life's purpose, my life-enhancing way of being. And so I have to let it die, I have to let it go. And it's a natural thing, the branch that got hit by lightning falls off and becomes compost and feeds the roots underneath. Doesn't mean the whole tree has to die, right? But it's just a natural thing. It's not a something to be nervous about or anything like that.
Do you know what? This has really opened something up in me, because actually I hadn't thought about that moment and how that actually, I guess, initiated that almost like the autumn period of my Formula One career. Because actually now I think about it, that was that point where I started to question and say, actually, is this in alignment with me still? And started to have those little things of, okay. And I didn't acknowledge it at the time. And it's funny because I was working with a spiritual teacher called Stephanie Victoire at the time. And she said to me, and now I'm piecing it together, she said to me at that moment, I think it was a few weeks later, I had a session with her, and she said, do you think that, maybe Formula One's in alignment for you? Do you think you would ever leave this career? Because I was clearly, obviously, everything I was saying it was out of alignment. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to follow my heart. And that immediately, that fear kicked in, and I went, no, absolutely not. Got really actually quite annoyed with her for saying it. Really triggered me. And now I think about that and how it all flowed. And yeah, that stepping into the woods really initiated it. And then fast forward to 2021, and I was stood on the side of a lake. And that was the moment where my intuition just gave me the punch in my guts and said, no, you're out. This is it. This has gone on too long. You need to leave. You are handing your notice in. That's it. So yeah, wow, that's really expanded that sort of that journey. And to that point as well, something that I've really learned with you is around, the fact that actually, much like in nature, as the Lao Tzu quote goes, nature does not hurry, but everything is accomplished. And actually, there is a slowness in transitions within nature. And I think, I came from a very impulsive world. And actually what I'm connecting into now is, it felt impulsive on the exit, but actually there was that slow, the, like you said, the tree branch, maybe it's kind of, been severed or whatever it is, it's hanging up, then it's on the ground, then it's slowly going into its death. So yeah, that's really, really taken me to a space of slowness in nature. So Maria, I would love to speak to you about slowness. And I know this will make you smile because of our journey together and the fact that you have very much been my coach and my mentor on how to slow down, how to find a different rhythm in life. The fact that actually we don't need to be going in sort of a very fast pace all of the time. So I'd also love to hear around our disconnection from those natural rhythms and the pace of life that nature calls us to. And yeah, just your perspective on working with people like myself who come from a very fast paced, maybe corporate world.
I think one great teacher, and I always call nature the co-facilitator when I work in that space. One great teacher is water. And for lots of reasons. I mean, water is finite on the planet, which means it's infinite in its life cycle. So really, it never dies, and yet it dies all the time. I just love that. It evaporates, it comes back. The water in my veins might have been inside the dinosaurs. How cool is that, right? So water has got this magic to it. But also, when we shift from a very fast-paced space into something different, I quite like the wild rivers that allow us to go fast at times and then invite us to sit in an eddy and just drift in the eddy for days, for months, until we're ready. And it doesn't preclude big shifts, because then there might be a waterfall. Like, I am leaving Formula One, that's a waterfall, right? And then you come down the waterfall, and very often below a waterfall is an eddy, and you sit for a while. And so the water is a great teacher of saying, okay, I want to change my rhythm. what type of water do I need at the moment? Do I need to sit still with a lake or a pond and just breathe in the peace and just breathe in the stillness and see what arises up? Have I been still long enough, and do I actually need to step into the eddy and get a bit of playful? Because it's playful, right? It froths up and it sparkles in the sun. And do I play for a bit until I know where I'm going? And then I might have a deep channel of purpose and intention, and I'm zooming along that channel. So the water gives us all these aspects when we watch it and see what it does and go, what do I need? Where is my river at the moment? What does my river need? Does it need eddy? Does it need to spread out as a braided river and just go really slow for a while? Or have I done that for a while and now I really need some action? And I'm going to go into a narrow gorge and I'm going to zoom forward and then I'm going to pause again. So it's a really great teacher in that. I mean, it does a lot of other things, but in response to your question. And the other part that sort of strikes me when you ask that question is the transformation from caterpillar to butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's got so much teaching in it. It's so exciting. The caterpillar is always on the go. Much. Where's my next leaf? Right? They don't stop. Right? They don't stop. They go. And then they pupate. And I find that magical. I'm going, what happened in the moment you decided to pupate, caterpillar? I'd love to have that conversation with them, right?
Oh, wow.
And they weave this amazing cocoon and they go inside and then nothing happens on the outside. In the outside world, it looks like everything's become pure stillness. On the inside, they turn into soup. I call it soup, right? The whole thing turns into mush, into a liquid. And then it reshapes. And then it comes out as a butterfly. And when the butterfly hatches, it doesn't hatch fast. If you've watched a butterfly coming out of the chrysalis, it's a little bit. And it's almost like, oh, what's that? I've never had a wing before. What is that? Oh, it moves. Oh, it unfolds. Right? And it's this whole discovery of new. And when I think of, the cycle of death and rebirth and how when we go through grief and we get really stuck in it and we get stuck in the soup, right? We get really drawn in there and go, we don't know how to go forward, how to grow out of this. What can emerge from this that is beautiful? And we need to ask that question, but it's very hard to see. What is one of the challenging things and where the caterpillar butterfly sequence can teach us is that all the skills the caterpillar had are useless for the butterfly, right? Because it never flew, right? It never had glorious, big, colorful wings. It was eating leaves, not drinking nectar. So there's some bit of knowledge that comes through. You need to sustain yourself. You need to nurture yourself. But so much is so brand new. And this butterfly goes, oh, wow, now what? Oh, do I flap those things? What happens if I flap them? Right? Oh, I lift off. Oh, I don't know if I like that. I quite like being attached to a leaf. So there's so much new coming in. So when we as humans go through a grieving process and we come out the other end, it might feel like a very slow emergence. And that's okay. And it might feel like we're not sure what's unfolding here. And we go, what is that? Why am I doing this? Why is this attracting me? Because that's the butterfly saying, what are those funny wings I've got? And if we allow it to unfold slowly and in rhythm with our own being, something amazing, beautiful will emerge. When I think of you and your loss and this amazing podcast that's come out of it, and how many people it's reached, and how much beauty it's created, and how much love and understanding. That's your wings, right? That's the wings unfolding back. That was very hard to see when you're in the soup, when you're in the middle of the pain and the grief and the loss. So I just believe that nature has got these little magical miracles that if we really watch, we go, oh, it's okay that I don't know what to do here because nor does the butterfly. It sort of finds out when it comes out. It's like it takes its time. It sits there for hours and grows its wings.
I love that. And I think that's so profound with that invitation to, take it slow, particularly in that emergence from the chrysalis, because I think, we are so used in our sort of modern and that medicalized culture. It's really, how can I take a pill and fix this quickly? What's the quickest route through? Versus actually, how can I, obviously, there's that time in the chrysalis of just being in that soup and going through it. The only way out is through it. And then on the emergence as well, to just, if I really do connect it into my grief journey after we lost our daughter, it was exactly that. And obviously we've been speaking throughout that journey, and now I'm sort of tracking to our conversations. And I remember at the first one when you just held space for me with what's coming up, and that was very much I was goo. I was just two little eyeballs floating around in the goo of my grief. And then actually when I emerged, I remember starting to speak to you around these little seeds of ideas that were coming through. And I was saying, Maria, I know I want to go, really deep into the death space. It was already emerging as a purpose, but now this feels so much more, I suppose, defining of everything that I want to do. And I remember we just sat with it. And I remember actually when we first started working together, you mentioned around like sort of in winter, when you're in that winter stage, that there's also that you can polish the seeds, just polish those seeds of intentions. And then just like the little marigold seeds in our garden, I see the marigolds when they die back at the end of summer. And I know those seeds, they're just going to sit in the soil and just be held until they're ready to bloom. And it was wonderful, actually. For me, it did align with the summer here. It was August where I remember just one day was like, right, I'm ready. Here we go, podcast, let's go. I'm ready to have these conversations. But that was after, pretty much nearly a year of just being with it, being with my grief, and also purposefully as well for me. And I know that it's really difficult in our culture, but purposely taking my sort of foot off the gas as much as I possibly could, around sort of work and other things. Obviously, I appreciate people who've got to pay the bills and, other stuff. So, we've got to do it within the realms of that which we can, but just giving myself that space. And you've always told me to give myself grace. Grace is a word that I think of you whenever I speak about it. And it was just really, how can I be really compassionate to myself and just allow that stillness, allow that silence, allow that chrysalis, and then to your point, allow that emergence and feeling my wings.
And also if we, because what you say strikes me about, we have to pay the bills, we have to still work, we have to do all this. But if we have the need to tune in, we do have the innate knowledge, what I said at the beginning about, nature's in us and we're in nature. We can go and sit with even an image on the computer of a chrysalis and say, I want to tune into that energy. I need to go, I've got half an hour and then I need to be back on the job. I just want to give myself that peace and that stillness and that kindness. And I'm just going to ask the chrysalis to really teach me and go really quiet with it and really be with it. And it fills us up. There's something magical that happens that just fills us up. I've seen that with people who, one woman I used to coach, and she would love the coaching and then she'd run off and do another 5 things. And I kept saying, integrate, take time out. Don't do anything when you get home. Have an ice cream on the way home, like all of that. And she just, there was something that stopped her. And then we went into nature together and I asked her what. I did a reflection exercise and she walked up to this tree and sat with this tree. And she came back and she looked at me sort of funnily and she said, it's all about roots. To just be my roots and not move. And I just burst out laughing because as a coach, and I might be a good coach, but as a coach, I could not get through. And she sat in nature and my co-facilitator nature, bang, there it was. And it changed everything for her.
Yeah, I love that. And that really resonates actually with a lot of my work because, inspired by sort of my journey. And because my frustration with corporate is sort of how it inflects, particularly in the office space, how inflexible it is. But to your point, you know, so much of my coaching in sort of rest practices and how you can bring them into any day is in micro moments. So yeah, when can you take that 30-minute break? Or even, you know, I've found 5 minutes just stood outside in the garden, or, you know, when I'm in town for meetings now, it's amazing when you're looking just how many trees and beautiful plants growing through cracks in pavements and things that are so awe-inspiring that you can find where you can connect into them and just take that moment in stillness, in being, which I think is medicine that we all need, you know, at any point, but particularly when we're grieving. Because again, you know, one of the things that I think our society needs to fix is actually how little time people get off for grief journeys, that sort of bereavement leave. And actually, you know, if you are working in corporate or a space where it is, you know, very restricted, just know exactly, to, as Maria's been saying, that you can, yeah, even having a picture on your laptop to be able to connect into that beautiful nature connection and just sit with and just prioritize that space versus, which is what a lot of us do, versus jumping on our phone and scrolling through social media. Actually take a real nourishing moment of just slowing down, because actually when we spend our time in social media, we're ultimately still going at that really kind of fast pace. So how can you purposely slow down
and be really intentional? If I mean, I would love to suggest to people, explore your connection to nature and be really intentional. So if you're on Zoom meetings a lot, then don't take one of those prefab backgrounds. Go and find a nature photo that really makes you smile, that really gets you inspired, and make that your background. Or go out, even better, go out and take a photo of something that inspires you. But if you're not, then download something that really inspires you, makes you smile every time you look at the screen. And every time you do that and you enter a meeting, you have a nature connection. So it doesn't have to be difficult. It's just a case of saying, I'm putting the intention out, I will be connected more and more throughout the day. And, you know, go outside, walk amongst high-rise building, well, look up, what shape are the clouds? And it'll just change everything, walking between two meetings, you know, looking at those clouds and going, wow, that looks like a horse. What is going on up there, you know? And immediately your mind rests, your alpha brain waves kick in, you have a totally different feel, and nature holds you because it's you. You are nature, so you're holding yourself differently.
I love that. And that's got me thinking about one of the practices actually that I did when I was in Formula One in the paddock, which, if anyone doesn't know about Formula One, it's sort of, I guess, like the backstage area where sort of all the garages are and the teams and everyone's working. Not much nature. Sometimes there would be some races, there would be the odd trees and plants, but not much nature. And I remember once I was stood looking up at the sky because I could feel the adrenaline was going and I really needed to ground myself. So just felt my feet on the ground, looking up at the sky. And I remember someone comes up to me, was like, "You right, T? What's going on?" Because you know, that in that world, who just stares and looks up at the sky. But it is amazing. And when you reconnect to the clouds as well and everything going on in the sky, or the stars, you know, for me, one of my winter pleasures is the fact, because in summer here I can't catch the stars because I'm always asleep. But in winter, it's about that sunrise, sunset, and then the starry night sky. And there's something that just brings back that sort of inner childlike joy of actually when you're a kid and you're just like lying on the ground, just watching the clouds, or you see the stars, or whatever it is. So there are, you know, wherever you are, no matter how grey it is, the sky is always there for you.
And it brings me to another piece, and that is when we go through grief and loss, we are in danger of contracting too much. And so anything in nature that can open us up and expand out again is just a gift. So when you talk about the stars, that's a huge expansion, you know, to go up and say, hey, that's the Milky Way. That's ours. We belong there, right? And a sense of belonging comes in. That's quite different, because what we often do when we lose someone, especially when we lose a person, but it can be even a job or a friendship or whatever, we narrow in on separation. And we've already talked about how we're disconnected from nature. So we amplify our disconnectedness and our separation, and it doesn't do us any good. You know, if I think of my dad, I love my dad to bits. He taught me unconditional love, right? But actually, if I now think of him, and he's long passed over, I think, well, he's in my DNA. I hold his teachings in my heart. You know, I can feel him. I can, you know, it's like he's just transmuted into a different way of being my dad. And that feels expensive instead of just, oh, you know, he's still gone, you know, and go in. So there's something about grief where if we contract in too much, it's very hard to navigate forward. And if we're willing to open up a bit and say, well, I'm part of nature, I'm part of this ecosystem, I'm part of this planet, I'm part of our universe, I'm part of the star system, I'm part of the Milky Way, then suddenly things shift because we're not so lonely, we're not so isolated, we have this massive interconnectedness. And to bring it back to something really practical, I suggest to people at times is to map their ecosystem and to just go into the park or woods or whatever you have available to you and look for things you're curious about. Well, I wonder what the roots of that tree really look like, and then do a drawing or take a photo on your phone or whatever, and then put it on a big picture board or in a journal or whatever feels right, and then go back 2 days later and go, what else am I curious about? And you're mapping the ecosystem of the park or the ecosystem of your neighborhood. And as you do it, you ask yourself, why was I attracted to the roots? What does it tell me about myself? And so actually mapping where you fit. And that builds gradually, gently belonging. And then the next time you walk in that park, you feel so held. And you can just sit down with a tree there and go, wow, this tree's holding me, and there's my little pond over there, and there's these flowers they've just planted, and the world changes. You know, it's like this gentle expansion. It's a very easy thing to do. It's a very easy practice, but it's very powerful. And I really recommend making it visual. Either draw pictures with crayons and things, or take photos and print them and stick them on a board and just be playful with that.
Wow, what a beautiful practice of belonging. And I love that perspective of expansion, because you're right. When you are in grief, it's easy. The world closes and it feels like you stepped into another dimension. You know, just looking out there, the world is continuing. So being able to have that expansion back into the world, but also what I could feel was that it's the cycle of life, isn't it? To your point around those who we love, who have departed us, actually, that they still live on through us, and you know, however we choose to kind of continue that spiritual connection to them and that understanding. And even, you know, for me with my daughter, it was that understanding that actually her being here and her death, and you know, as she went back in to be held by the earth, actually I really connected into the fact that she made me and continues to make me a better person through that connection. And actually, I look up at the stars. There's one star that I really connect to with her. Whenever I see that star in the sky, I'm like, okay, Nakorayona, you're speaking to me here. Like, let's have a conversation. And it's so beautiful. And I think it's the same of, you know, when we connect in from that perspective, and that, as you shared earlier, you know, the water that's within us would have been the water that was within the dinosaurs and everything. You know, we are created from, you know, all of that magic that came through all of our ancestral lines. And I think it's just so powerful and profound, and actually really nourishing and supportive when we can expand out and really sort of realize, actually, this is the horizons of our world. In, you know, in an individualistic world, I think it can be the best tonic, particularly at those times when we're hurting.
I think quite a few Indigenous people I've connected with have prayers or stories that take the person that's passed over into the stars. You know, there's a song of the stars that takes the souls from life through death into the next dimension. And They call themselves the Birds of Fire. That's a First Nation prayer in the States. And here in New Zealand, Matariki, they collect the stars all year in the canoe and then release them up, the souls, and they become stars. And they say you have turned into a star about the people who've lost. So I think that deep-seated knowledge that nature can help us expand again. And, respecting the fact that we have a narrow time where it is really dark and really, really challenging, and then coming back out. The caterpillar cannot stay in the chrysalis. If he stays in the chrysalis, it dies. It needs to come out. And so it's okay to go in the chrysalis, and it's really important to come back out. It's really important to know that with grief. And the other part is the compassionate witness, which, I use a lot in my coaching, and people like Gabor Mate made an art form out of it. But it's an expansion, because the moment someone else sits with you and is simply there, it's no longer this narrow focus. And I worked with a client who's had so much trauma in her life. Never met anyone who's had that much trauma. And just being witness suddenly changed. I didn't do anything. I was just listening for now. Changed the world and opened it up, and so much has happened for her. Now imagine if we go in nature, and nature is our friend and our co-facilitator and our nurturer, and we just allow nature to witness what is going on for us. Then, we're not, yes, we are as humans reliant on each other, but we're not waiting for a human to do that for us. We simply go and say, hello, tree, I've been sitting with you for weeks now. I need to tell you a story. This is what's happened. And suddenly we move out of the chrysalis, because nature can hold that.
Nature is always there to hold us. And what I can really feel from that as well is that cultivating that relationship, and you've always sort of spoken to me around that sort of the real spirit of reciprocity, and making sure that, we are cultivating that relationship, that we are giving just as we receive. And actually when we do, and I can tell, well, I've told you many times, Maria, but I can tell anyone who's listening that from my journey in this space of really sort of cultivating that deeper connection to nature, just how much you receive when you do give. And actually, exactly to your point, in my grief journey, there's been many times, because the reality is that, yes, there are people, thankfully, in my life who have held space for me, but obviously, then it is, life does continue. And, that sort of, I guess, on the daily, me knowing that I could go and sit with a tree and hug a tree and have my back to a tree and just spend time and speak my truth as well. And oftentimes as well in grief, there's a truth that it can feel uncomfortable to speak to other humans. And actually, I found nature to be really, really supportive in my journey when I am feeling frustrated, when I'm feeling a lot, when it's overwhelming, to just be able to go and have those conversations.
And we bring the magic back, because if you're cultivating, if you're bringing reciprocity, if you pick up the water and say, I wish you clarity, and bring it back into the lake, we do that, the magic happens. I've had scenarios where I said, I really don't know if I want to go to this gathering, because there's been so much pain there for me. And I really need an answer. And I walk out the back, and the little silver-eyed birds that I'm feeding all go up in a swarm and go north, which is where I need to go, and then come back and sit and feed. And I'm going, is this real? And that's when the magic comes in, when we're really both cultivating the relationship.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Actually, it's interesting because in my journey as well, the beautiful animals who've appeared in the most magical of ways. Like the first time that I ever saw a jaybird in the woods was in that transition point of me leaving Formula One. Saw the little tail with it's the blue stripes on the fells. Oh, what's that? What's that bird? And then in the next few days, there was just two of those feathers that I just kept finding on my walks, just 2 walks in a row. And I was like, okay, what's the message here? Then started tuning in, listening, and it is amazing. And I think, again, it's where we, you know, when we are so disconnected and so distracted by having our headphones in on our walks, on our phones, you know, that sort of, or just ruminating in our minds, you know, not present, to be able to call yourself back into presence is so powerful, because you just never know what you might see and what messages you might receive in the conversations that you might, or you will have, if only you are to give your presence to nature and cultivate that two-way energy exchange.
And because you are nature, you're messaging yourself.
Yes.
You open that relationship, and it's almost like it awakens something in us that allows that exchange.
Yes, I love that. I remember you in our first session, you said that about the co-creational relationship with nature. And I remember you saying to me, it's not you just receiving messages, it's that co-creational force. And that's always sat with me, and I can really feel that energy. And it's amazing. I find it just my greatest source of inspiration, just remembering that actually I can go into nature and have that co-creational conversation at any time. Actually, I don't need to exit my house. I can literally look out the willow tree. I can look up at the sky. Sometimes I do that between meetings. There's a little bush down next to the window where I do all my meetings, and there's all especially in spring, all the birds are all chirping away for a lot of the day, and I'll just connect in and just tune in and just listen within. I think that's what it really inspires, doesn't it? So, Maria, as we come towards the closing of our conversation, I have a couple more questions for you. One is, if you have any final sort of words of wisdom or practices that can help anyone who's listening, whether it's anything obviously in the grief space or anything else, just on how they can connect into, obviously this conversation is called Death on the Daily, but how they can connect into nature on the daily, maybe a spin-off. But yeah, how can they sort of bring this practice into their days?
Okay, so two things I want to say is, when I close it after that, definitely build connection with a tree if you can. Build a relationship, watch what the leaves do, what the light does. Give yourself a place of home in nature that you can go every day. Play with water in the shower, in the bath, when it rains. Really explore it and be really, really playful, and note down what you find out. Because you might find out that standing in the rain for 2 minutes changes your perspective on anything. You know, for different people, it's different things. So play and explore. And the one thing I would suggest, I'm not sure if it's daily or every second day or how it comes in, but it's a really good practice, is your fitness of curiosity through asking the question, what am I growing today? You know, become nature that grows all the time, and go, what am I growing today? And you may go into a meeting and come out and go, actually, I didn't grow anything. I killed a few things off, right? And it's okay. It's okay. The question is the fitness of always staying curious, because if you stay curious, you don't get sunk down into the grief. What am I growing here? I've just lost my job. I've just lost this friendship I really treasured. What am I growing? What am I growing? And suddenly, out of these moments of distress and grief and sadness and darkness, come little glimmers of growing. And it might be the start of a butterfly wing, I don't know. But what am I growing today? And sometimes it's just, I ask myself, I'm going, what am I growing today? I'm going, oh, okay, I've got lots of meetings. It's all a bit tense. I'm growing smiles today. Wherever I go, I'm going to smile. And it's a conscious decision, right? Because I feel comfortable with that. And, oh, wow, that was a good day, because I grew smiles all day. And I was growing something beautiful that is easy to grow. So that would be my highest recommendation. And the other thing I just wanted to sort of, as we're closing up, say, Māori and Aotearoa have a beautiful, what they call whakatauki, a proverb, and it's called Ue nuku tu wairua. The rainbow stands in two places. And I just thought, for your podcast, that is such a beautiful thing. The rainbow stands in where the grief may have originated and where you're growing to. And in between are glorious colors. The rainbow stands in two places. of course, we can apply to respecting diversity and celebrating that as well. But in the sense of dealing with death and grief and transmutation, the rainbow stands in two places. Don't just focus on the one place. Stand in two places. The moment you stand in two places, you get colors.
Wow. I love that so much. The rainbow stands in two places.
I just want to say, Dr. Hinnamore Elder is the one who shared that with me. So just want to give credit to her.
I love Dr. Hinnamore Elder. Yeah, what an incredible, wow, what a proverb. And wow, I've really connected into that. And as well, when I see that rainbow that's standing in two places as well, there's obviously all of the colors within that rainbow. So as well, I think when grief can feel so, I suppose, monotone, it feels very gray, it feels very like horrible. I'm in this actually to appreciate that whole rainbow and actually stands in two places. That's so beautiful. And Dr. Hinnamore Elder, I love her writing. She is absolutely incredible. So also got to give her a big shout out. She's someone actually I'm hoping at some point I can get on the podcast for a conversation.
It'd be great. She's awesome.
Yes, she's amazing. So Maria, as we close out our conversation, I'm taking, as always, from every conversation with you, I'm taking so much away. But I would love you to share, where can anyone who's tuning in connect with you? How can they potentially work with you?
Okay, so the easiest way to send me an email, and it's simply maria@growingdialogue.nz. And Growing Dialogue has a GUE at the end, so easy, maria@growingdialogue.nz. I have room to take people on in deep nature coaching. And as you know, I can do that on Zoom as well as I can do it face-to-face. And also, I just wanted to say, I'm finally taking the step. I'm going to take our nature workshops live online, probably starting in April. And there'll be a 6-month offering of a monthly tutorial, a group coaching, and individual coaching each month. And a theme for each of the tutorials, and, really delicious themes like courageous joy, flow in your community, and empathy and resilience and personal leadership and stuff like that. So each one has a theme, but it's deeply based in the 4 or 5 years that we've experimented with delivering nature workshops. So I would love people to get in touch if they're interested on any of that. And and any questions. We also have started training trainers and for bringing nature into facilitation, when you facilitate collaborations or strategic planning or whatever. So we've got a bit of a module of trainer in that. But the excitement for me, for my wings unfolding, is that I'm taking the nature workshops online so more people can benefit from nature's wisdom. I'm just a carrier.
That is such a beautiful, beautiful offering. I can attest how what magic unfolds working with you. So I will put your email and the link to where people can find you in the show notes. So check it out. Check out Maria's work. And Maria, my heart is full. At the end of our conversation, I am so grateful to you. Thank you for joining me today.
And thank you for the opportunity, Tanya. I'm so pleased that I got the opportunity to share what nature's shared with me with others.
All of my gratitude to you for joining me for another Dead Conversation. Death on the Daily is edited by David Strutt. The music is Set Free by Katie Gray. And I am Tanya Wilkinson. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be over the moon if you can rate, review, and subscribe. It really, really helps me to get the word out there. And if you want to say hi or to hear more about my work as a coach and death doula, including how I support my clients to navigate their death on the daily, then all of the ways that you can connect with me are in the show notes. I'll be back soon with some more Dead Conversations. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself and others.
There's a cold fire, there's a crossfire, and there's something